The air was heavy with smoke and dust. The sound of chains clinking and voices shouting filled the slave market. Alien cages lined both sides of the dark street, each cage holding someone broken, tired, and hopeless. In one of those cages sat a young alien girl, her eyes wide with fear, her small hands gripping the cold iron bars as if they were the only thing keeping her alive. She had been captured weeks ago, dragged from her ruined home, and now she was nothing more than a product on display waiting for the highest bidder. The auctioneer, a tall alien with a cruel smile, shouted loudly to the crowd, "Look here, rare slave girl, strong enough to work, beautiful enough for pleasure, and obedient if you know how to train her." His words cut her like knives. She was not strong, not beautiful, not obedient. She was only afraid. But fear made her silent, and silence made buyers curious. The crowd pressed closer, their eyes glowing with greed. Some whispered about how much pain she could endure. Others laughed about what kind of screams she might make. Her heart pounded like a drum. Every word felt like a blade across her skin. She knew what buyers usually wanted: torture, labor, death. No one bought a slave to give kindness. No one. Her breath caught when she saw him. A human, a middle-aged man with the lines of age and hardship carved into his face. His clothes were simple, worn from travel, not the fine robes of the rich merchants. He didn't look cruel, but she had heard the stories. Humans were monsters, they said. Humans broke, slaves in ways worse than others. Humans could not be trusted. The auctioneer raised his hand and shouted again, "Who will start the bidding? Look at her. A prize to own, a prize to command." Voices rose in the air, prices shouted one after another. 10 coins, 15, 20. Each number was like the hammer of fate. But then, silence fell for a moment. The human raised his hand. His voice was calm, almost quiet, but it carried across the crowd. 50. Everyone turned to stare. 50 was too much. 50 was not the price of a common slave girl. 50 was the price of something rare, something priceless. The alien buyers muttered in anger. Some laughed bitterly. Why would this human waste so much on her? The girl's blood ran cold. Her chest tightened. Why would he pay so much unless he wanted to break her slowly? Unless he wanted to keep her alive for long pain? She wanted to scream, but no sound came out. Her body shook as the auctioneer banged his staff and shouted, "Sold to the human!" The cage door creaked open. 2 guards dragged her out, her bare feet scraping against the rough stone. She stumbled, but they forced her forward, their claws, digging into her arms. The human stood waiting, holding the papers of ownership. His eyes met hers for the first time. They were not cruel but steady, unreadable. She could not see mercy in them, but she could not see hunger either. Just a quiet strength. He took her chain from the guards. She flinched when his hand brushed against her wrist. She expected a slap, a whip, a harsh pull. Instead, he only held the chain loosely, not jerking it, not yanking her. His voice was deep, low, but not unkind. "Walk." Her legs trembled as she stepped beside him. The crowd watched them leave the auction block, some laughing, some whispering. The girl's mind raced. Why had he bought her? What did he want? She had seen men like him before, silent ones who pretended calm before showing cruelty later. Maybe he wanted to break her in secret, away from the eyes of others. Maybe that was why he paid so much, to hide his own darkness. As they moved, farther from the market, the noise faded. The girl dared to look at him again. His face was tired, his hair touched with gray, his hands rough like those of a worker. He didn't look like a rich torturer. But she couldn't believe in kindness, not here, not in this world. Her thoughts burned in her head. I am a slave. He is my master. My life is no longer mine. The human walked in silence, never once raising his hand against her. But silence was its own kind of terror. Every moment stretched like a knife over her throat. Would he hurt her tonight? Tomorrow? Or would he wait until she trusted him before breaking her completely? Her breath shook as they passed into the shadows of the city. For a moment, she thought of running. But where could she go? The collar around her neck still glowed faintly, with the mark of ownership. If she fled, the guards would capture her again, maybe even kill her. And if she angered this human, perhaps his punishment would be worse. So she walked, step by step. Her heart pounding, her hands cold, her eyes filled with silent tears she dared not let fall. At the auction block, she had thought she already knew the meaning of fear. But now, walking beside this quiet human who had bought her life with 50 coins, she realized fear had only just begun. The street outside the auction was dim and quiet, but the girl's heart still beat like thunder in her chest. Her feet dragged across the rough ground, each step a reminder that her life now belonged to the human who had bought her. The chain in his hand clinked softly as they walked, but he never pulled hard, never jerked her forward. He simply held it steady and calm, as if he did not even notice the weight of ownership. To her, that silence was worse than shouting. At least shouting she could understand. Cruelty she had seen before. But this stillness, this quiet, it felt like a storm waiting to break. Her thoughts twisted in fear. He is waiting. He wants me to relax first. Then he will strike. He will not show his teeth here in the street. He will wait until the doors close, until no one can hear me scream. She lowered her eyes, unable to meet his gaze. Every time she risked a glance at him, his face was unreadable. Calm, weathered, tired. No anger, no hunger, no smile. That emptiness made her skin crawl. They passed through the busy part of the market, then turned into quieter alleys. People stared as they walked. Some laughed, some spat at her, others whispered behind their hands. She felt their eyes burn into her skin. To them, she was nothing but a slave, an object, property, not a person. Her shoulders curled inward, her steps became smaller. But the human never reacted to the stares. He kept walking as if none of it mattered. As if the world around him was too far away to touch him. The girl's hands shook as she whispered, almost too softly to hear. Why did you buy me?" Her voice cracked, the sound raw from days without speaking. She regretted the words instantly, afraid he would strike her for daring to question. She flinched, waiting for the blow, but none came. The human did not stop, walking. His head turned slightly as though he had heard, but he gave no answer. Silence again. Her throat tightened. That silence was heavier than chains. It was worse than cruelty. She would rather he shouted, rather he laughed, rather he told her the pain to come. Anything but this calm, endless quiet. They walked for what felt like hours. The city around them changed. Stone streets gave way to dirt paths. Buildings grew, fewer, shadows deeper. At last, the girl realized they were leaving the slave quarter behind. Her fear grew sharper. Outside the crowded city, there would be no eyes to see what he would do to her. Her breath came fast. She thought of running, again. But the chain glowed faintly, its mark still binding her to him. Even if she tried, the collar would burn her neck and drag her back. She had no choice but to walk beside him. At one turn, they passed a group of young aliens drinking by a broken wall. They jeered as they saw her. One shouted, "Human, how much for the toy? Let us borrow her for an hour." The others laughed, cruel and loud. The girl froze, her body stiff with shame. She waited for the human to reply, to show her off, to prove his ownership by humiliating her. That was what other masters did. That was what she expected. But the man never stopped, never looked at them. His steps did not falter. His grip on the chain did not tighten. He walked as if he had not even heard their words. The laughter faded, behind them. But her heart kept racing. Why did he not answer? Why did he not claim her, boast about her, punish her for the insult? His silence confused her more than cruelty ever could. Finally, as the city's last lights dimmed behind them, the girl could no longer hold her fear inside. Her voice broke in a whisper. If you are going to hurt me, do it now. Please. Don't wait. Her words hung in the cold night air. She expected him to stop, to turn on her, to reveal the monster she knew he must be. But the human only glanced at her, his eyes unreadable in the dark. Then he spoke, his first words since the auction. His voice was calm, deep, steady. Keep walking. Her stomach nodded. That was all? No threat, no promise, just an order. She obeyed, because she had no choice. But inside her chest, the storm grew wilder. At last, after what felt like forever, they reached a small house at the edge of the city. The walls were old but strong, the door plain, the windows glowing faintly with warm light. It was not the home of a rich man. It was not a place of luxury. It was simple, quiet. Yet to her eyes, it looked like a prison. He opened the door and stepped inside, still holding her chain. She hesitated at the threshold. The air smelled of wood and something warm, something cooking. It reminded her faintly of a memory long buried, of home before everything was taken. Her heart ached. Her fear screamed louder. She stepped inside. The door shut behind her with a sound that echoed like the end of the world. The silent walk was over. Now, whatever he truly wanted from her was about to begin. The wooden door closed with a heavy sound, and the girl's breath caught in her chest. Inside the small house, shadows stretched along the walls, broken only by the flicker of a single lamp. The human removed his boots and set them aside. He still held her chain, but loosely, as if it meant nothing to him. For her, it was everything, a reminder that she was trapped. She scanned the room with nervous eyes. The place was simple. One table, 2 chairs, shelves stacked with old books, and a small fire burning in a stone hearth. There was no torture rack, no chains hanging from the ceiling, no cruel tools hidden in corners. Instead, there was warmth. The smell of something cooking drifted from a pot above the fire, thick, rich, comforting. Her stomach twisted painfully at the scent. She hadn't eaten properly in weeks. The man walked toward the fire, not saying a word. He lifted the pot, stirred it slowly, then poured some into a bowl. Steam rose in the air. The girl's throat ached as she watched, her body trembling. This is the trick, she thought. He wants me to believe I am safe. He wants me to lower my guard. Then the real pain will begin. The human set the bowl on the table. He placed bread beside it, rough and simple, but warm. Then finally, he turned to her. His voice was steady, calm. Sit. She froze. Her legs refused to move. What do you want from me? She whispered, her voice shaking. Sit. He repeated. His tone was not harsh, not cruel, but firm. Her body obeyed before her mind could resist. She sat at the table, her chain clinking softly against the chair. The man pushed the bowl toward her. The smell was stronger now. Soup, thick with vegetables and pieces of meat. Her stomach growled loudly, betraying her hunger. She clenched her fists, ashamed. Eat, he said. She stared at the bowl as if it were poison. No master ever gave food before breaking a slave. Some gave scraps after pain, like a reward for obedience, but never before, never first. Her lips trembled. Why? She asked. The man's eyes met hers. For a moment she thought she saw something like tired kindness or maybe pity, but it was gone too quickly to know for sure. He did not answer. The silence pressed down on her. At last her hunger broke her fear. She lifted the spoon, with trembling hands. Slowly, carefully she tasted the soup. Warmth spread through her body, shocking her senses. It was not bitter. It was not drugged. It was good. Real food, the kind she had almost forgotten existed. Tears stung her eyes, but she blinked them away quickly, afraid he might think she was weak. She ate faster, spoon after spoon. The hunger, too strong to hide. The bread was soft, the soup filling. She had never eaten this much in one sitting. Her chest ached with every swallow, but she couldn't stop. The human said nothing. He only sat across from her, arms crossed, watching quietly. Not like a predator, not like a man waiting for a scream, just watching like someone making sure she wouldn't choke. When the bowl was empty, she sat back, breathing hard, her hands shaking. Shame burned her face. I didn't mean to eat so much, she whispered. I was hungry. The man's reply was simple. You were starving. His voice was not cruel, not mocking, just stating a fact. The girl's heart pounded. Why? Why is he doing this? She wanted to ask again, but her throat locked. Her fear still whispered, it is a trick. He wants you to trust him. He wants you weak before he begins. The man stood, picked up the bowl and set it aside. Then he walked to a small chest, opened it, and pulled out a blanket. He placed it on the chair beside her. You will sleep here tonight, he said. Her eyes widened. She glanced at the blanket, then back at him. Not the floor? She asked, confused. Here, he repeated, his tone final. Her mind spun in circles. No master gave slaves chairs. No master gave slaves warm blankets. This had to be a trick. She waited for the hidden laugh, the sudden cruelty, the moment where the mask dropped. But it never came. The fire crackled softly. The warmth of the meal still lingered in her body. Slowly, uncertainly, she pulled the blanket around her shoulders. It felt soft against her skin. She sat stiffly, afraid to relax. The human sat back, at the table lighting a small pipe. Smoke curled in the air. His eyes were distant, staring into nothing. He looked more like a tired traveler than a monster. The girl clutched the blanket tighter. Her stomach was full for the first time in months. Her body was warm, and yet fear still wrapped around her heart. She closed her eyes for a moment, whispering inside her mind, if he is kind, it is only to break me later. If he feeds me, it is only so he can enjoy my screams longer. No one buys a slave to give her life back. No one. But deep, deep inside, beneath all the fear and doubt, a tiny spark glowed. A fragile, dangerous thought she dared not speak aloud. What if he is different? The small fire in the stone hearth burned low, its light flickering against the wooden walls. The girl sat stiffly on the chair, the blanket wrapped around her shoulders. The warmth of the soup lingered in her stomach, but it did little to quiet the storm of fear inside her chest. The human had said no more words. After giving her the blanket, he sat at the table for a long time, smoking his pipe, staring at the flames. His face was unreadable, lost in thoughts she could not guess. Then, without warning, he stood, set the pipe aside, and walked into a small back room. The door creaked shut, leaving her alone in the main hall. Silence filled the house. The girl's fingers tightened around the edge of the blanket. Her heart raced faster now. Alone, she should have felt relief, but instead the silence pressed harder, heavier, as if invisible hands were wrapping around her throat. Her eyes darted around the room. There were no chains hanging from the ceiling, no whips on the wall, no cages hidden in corners. But that didn't matter. She knew torture didn't always need tools. Sometimes it was worse when it was planned slowly. Her thoughts turned darker. Maybe he is in the other room preparing something. Maybe the food was to give me strength so I will last longer. Maybe he will wait until I sleep and then begin. Her breath quickened. She could not sleep. She would not sleep. Quietly, she slipped her hand under the blanket and pulled out a small shard of metal she had hidden since the market. It was nothing more than a broken piece of cage wire, sharp at one end. She had stolen it when no one was watching. It was her only weapon. Her only chance. She held it tightly now, her knuckles white. If he tried to hurt her, she would strike. She didn't care if it killed her too. Better to die fighting than to be broken slowly. Hours passed. The fire burned lower. The shadows grew longer. The girl's eyes grew heavy, but fear kept her awake. Every creak of the wood, every whisper of the wind outside made her jump. She imagined his footsteps at the door, imagined him standing over her with cruel tools, imagined pain she could not escape. Her mind twisted with fear until she almost believed she could hear screams in the crackle of the fire. Suddenly, the door to the back room opened. She jerked upright, clutching the shard under the blanket, her breath caught in her throat. The human stepped out, his hair messy, his face marked with exhaustion. He carried no chains, no weapons, only a blanket of his own which he spread on the wooden floor near the wall. The girl's eyes widened. He was not coming toward her. He was lying down on the floor, away from her chair, away from her chain. He pulled the blanket over himself, turned his back and closed his eyes. She blinked, confused. This was not what she expected. No master ever slept near a slave without binding them first. No master ever left a weapon within reach. Her grip tightened on the shard. It is a trick. He is pretending to sleep. He wants me to try and run so he can punish me worse. But the sound of his breathing soon grew steady, slow, deep. It sounded real. It sounded like the breathing of someone who had carried too many burdens and finally let go. The girl sat frozen, staring at him through the flickering firelight. Her heart thundered in her chest. She could stab him now. She could end it, before it began. Her hand trembled, her breath shaking, but she did not move. Something in his calm face stopped her. Something in the quiet lines of weariness around his eyes told her this man was not the monster she imagined. Or maybe she was too afraid to trust her own thoughts. Minutes stretched into hours. The fire dimmed further, the room growing colder. She pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. Her body wanted rest, but her mind screamed danger. Every time her eyes closed, she forced them open again. The shard pressed into her palm, sharp and painful, reminding her she was not helpless, but still she could not act. At last, exhaustion won. Her head dropped against the chair, her eyes heavy. She drifted in and out of shallow sleep, always half awake, always ready for pain. Dreams came, dark and broken, filled with chains and screams. She woke several times with silent gasps, her heart pounding. But each time the human was still there, still sleeping, untouched, unmoving. As dawn approached, pale light began to creep through the small window. The girl sat shivering, the blanket wrapped around her tightly, the shard still clutched in her hand. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep, her body aching from the chair. Kialaru, human stirred, stretching his arms slowly like any ordinary man waking from a long night. He stood, rubbed his eyes and looked at her. For a moment their gazes met. His eyes were calm, steady, unreadable. She gripped the shard tighter, her body trembling. She waited for the mask to drop, for the cruelty to begin. But instead, he only spoke 3 simple words. "Are you hungry?" The girl's breath caught. Of all the words she expected, those were not among them. Her hand loosened around the shard. Confusion filled her chest, heavier than fear. What kind of master fed a slave twice? What kind of man slept on the floor, while a slave sat in his chair? She could not understand, and that made him more terrifying than anything she had known. The girl's eyes stayed fixed on him as his words echoed in the quiet room. "Are you hungry?" Her hands trembled, the shard of metal still hidden beneath the blanket, but her grip loosened. She did not know how to answer. Her voice refused to come. She only nodded once, quick and small, afraid he would grow angry if she stayed silent. The man turned without another word. He went back to the fire, stirred the pot that still hung above the embers, and poured soup into the same bowl as before. The smell filled the air again, rich and warm, making her stomach ache with longing. He placed the bowl on the table and stepped back. "Eat," he said. Her fingers tightened on the blanket. Suspicion burned in her chest. Why feed her again? Why waste food on a slave when he already owned her life? But hunger gnawed at her belly louder than fear. She moved slowly, cautiously, setting the shard aside where he could not see it. With trembling hands, she lifted the spoon and began to eat. He sat across from her again, his arms resting on the table. His eyes watched her, calm but heavy, as though he carried something she could not see. When the bowl was empty, she dared to speak. Her voice was small, hoarse. Why? Why do you keep feeding me? For a long moment he gave no answer. The silence stretched, thick and unbearable. She lowered her head, ashamed of her question. Then finally he spoke. His voice was deep, tired, and softer than she expected. Because I remember what it feels like to starve. Her eyes snapped up, surprise breaking through her fear. She blinked at him, trying to understand. He leaned back in his chair, his gaze drifting toward the fire. A long time ago I was captured. War, slavery. Different world, different chains, but chains all the same. His hand brushed across his wrist as if remembering the weight of shackles. I know what it is to be bought, beaten, broken. I know what it is to be treated as less than human. The girl froze. She had not expected this. No master ever spoke this way. No master admitted weakness or suffering. Masters were strong, cruel, unbroken. Yet here he was, speaking like someone who had lived the same pain as her. Her lips parted, but no words came out. His eyes returned to hers, steady, piercing. I will not do to another what was done to me. Her breath caught. The words hit her harder than any blow. She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe more than anything, but fear screamed louder in her mind. It's a lie. He is tricking. You? He says this now to make you trust him. Later he will show his true face. Her voice shook as she whispered, Then, why buy me? The man did not look away. Because if I had not, someone else would have. Someone who would not think twice about breaking you. I could not stand there and watch that happen. The girl's chest tightened, her heart pounding. His words sounded like truth. But truth was dangerous. Believing could cost her everything. She looked down at her hands, clenched together in her lap. You paid 50 coins, she said quietly. No one pays that much to protect. No one. For the first time his expression shifted. A faint, sad smile touched his lips. Then perhaps I am no one. The room fell silent again. The fire cracked softly, the air warm, yet she shivered. She searched his face for cruelty, for hidden hunger, for the mask she was sure he wore. But all she saw was tiredness. Lines of pain carved into his skin. A man who had seen too much, carried too much. Her mind swirled. Could it be true? Could a master be anything other than a monster? She wanted to ask more, but fear sealed her lips. The man stood, pushing back his chair. He picked up her empty bowl and set it aside. Then he walked to the door, opening it slightly to let in the cool morning air. For a moment he stood there, staring at the horizon, as if remembering places long lost. The girl's heart beat faster. The shard of metal still lay under the blanket at her side. If she wanted to escape, this was her chance. His back was turned, the door open. She could run. Her fingers brushed the shard. Her legs tensed, ready to move, but then she heard his voice again. Quiet, steady, almost weary. If you wish to run, I will not stop you. The collar will burn, yes, but it will not kill. You can try if you must. She froze. He knew. He had known all along. Slowly, he turned his head, his eyes meeting hers once more. But if you stay, you are safe. Here. The shard slipped from her hand and clattered softly onto the floor. Her breath shook. Safe. The word echoed in her chest, dangerous and fragile. Safe was not a word slaves ever heard. Safe was not real. Safe was a dream. She could not speak. She could only stare at him, torn between fear and hope, between disbelief and the tiny spark that whispered maybe, just maybe. He meant it. The man closed the door again, locking out the morning light. "Rest," he said simply. "You will need it." And with that, he walked back into the other room, leaving her trembling, broken between terror and the first truth she had ever been offered, that not all masters were monsters. The morning passed in uneasy silence. The girl sat near the fire, clutching the blanket around her shoulders. She could still hear his words in her head. "If you stay, you are safe here. Safe." The word twisted inside her, sharp and soft at the same time. She wanted to believe it, but disbelief clung to her like a second skin. Masters did not give safety. Masters gave chains. The human moved quietly around the small house. He cooked, cleaned, mended tools. He did not chain her, did not strike her, did not even order her to work. His silence was heavy, but no cruelty came with it. And then, sudden pounding shook the door. The girl flinched so hard the blanket fell from her shoulders. Her heart leapt into her throat. The human's head snapped up, his eyes narrowing. The hiya pounding came again, louder. A voice followed. Harsh, alien, cruel. "Human, open this door. You have something that belongs to us." The girl froze. She knew that voice. Her stomach dropped like stone. It was one of the guards from the auction house. Her body shook. "They came for me." The man stood slowly, his hand brushing against the table as if testing its weight. His voice was calm, steady. "Stay here." But her panic boiled over. "No," she whispered, her breath trembling. "They'll take me back. They'll kill me." The pounding grew fiercer. Another voice joined in. 50 coins doesn't buy freedom, human. She's property ours. Step aside." The human's jaw tightened. He moved toward the door. For the first time, his silence was broken by steel in his tone. Not anymore. The door shook under a heavy blow. The girl gasped, clutching the blanket. She wanted to run, to hide, to vanish into shadows. But her legs would not move. Her fear was a cage stronger than any chain. The human pulled the door open. Cold light spilled into the house. 3 aliens stood outside, armored and armed, their eyes glowing with greed. The leader sneered. "Step aside, old man, you're outnumbered." The human stepped forward, blocking the doorway with his body. His voice was quiet, but firm. "She's not going back." The alien laughed. "You think you can stop us? You're one man. A weak, aging human. We'll cut you down and drag her by her hair." The girl's chest burned with terror. She wanted to scream for him to give her up, to save himself. No one risked their life for a slave. No one. But the human did not move aside. His eyes hardened, his shoulders squaring as if the weight of the whole world pressed upon them. "Then try." The aliens lunged. The fight exploded in the doorway. The first alien swung a blade, but the human grabbed the table and slammed it forward, blocking the strike. The wood cracked, but the alien stumbled. The man's fist followed, striking hard into the alien's jaw, sending him crashing into the wall outside. The girl gasped, frozen between fear and shock. He wasn't just standing up to them. He was fighting for her. The second alien rushed in, claws flashing. The man caught the wrist, twisting hard until bones snapped with a sickening crack. The alien howled in pain, dropping his weapon. The man shoved him back with brutal strength. The leader snarled and drew a blade. "You'll die for this, human." The girl's heart stopped. The blade slashed toward him. But the man moved with surprising speed. He caught a chair, raising it like a shield. The blade cut deep into the wood, stuck there for a moment. The man drove his shoulder forward, slamming into the alien's chest. They crashed to the ground together. The fight was raw, desperate. The man bled from a cut on his arm, but his eyes burned with something fierce, something more powerful than fear. At last he wrenched the blade free and pressed it to the leader's throat. His voice thundered, louder than she had ever heard before. "She is not yours," the leader snarled, spitting blood. "She's a slave." The man's grip tightened on the blade. Not anymore. Silence fell. The other aliens, groaning and broken, dragged themselves up. They looked at the man's eyes and saw no weakness, no hesitation. The leader hissed, "This isn't over." He spat again, then staggered back. The others followed, limping into the shadows of the road. The door closed with a heavy thud. The girl sat frozen, trembling violently, her breath shallow. She stared at him. This human, this stranger who had just fought 3 men to keep her here. Blood dripped from his arm. He pressed a cloth to it, wincing but saying nothing. His chest rose and fell with steady breaths. Her voice broke, barely louder than a whisper. Why would you do that?" He looked at her, his eyes calm despite the wound. "Because I know what it feels like to have no one stand for you." Tears stung her eyes. She bit her lip hard, trying not to let them fall. The collar around her neck still glowed faintly. The chain still clinked with every small movement. But for the first time she felt something break. Not the iron, not yet, but something inside her chest. The belief that she was nothing. The belief that she was only property. He had risked his life for her. A slave. And for the first time, she wondered if maybe the chains could truly be broken. The small house was quiet again, but the silence was different now. The broken table still leaned against the wall. The floor was stained with drops of blood, and the air smelled faintly of sweat and iron. Yet in that silence, the girl felt something she had never known before: safety. Fragile, uncertain, but real. The human sat near the fire, wrapping a strip of cloth around his wounded arm. His movements were slow, careful, but steady. He did not look at her as he worked, as if the fight had cost him nothing, as if standing between her and death was only another day in his life. She sat across from him, the blanket still clutched around her shoulders. Her hands trembled, not from cold this time, but from the storm inside her chest. Her voice finally broke the silence. You could have let them take me. You would still be alive, unhurt. But you fought. Why?" He glanced up at her, his tired eyes meeting hers. "Because you are not theirs. You are not anyone's." Her breath caught. The words struck something deep inside her, something she thought had died long ago. She wanted to believe him, but fear still lingered, whispering in the corners of her mind. He finished tying the cloth and leaned back in his chair. For a moment he simply stared at the fire. Then slowly, he spoke again. "I told you before. I was once a slave too, chains on my wrists, beaten until I thought I was nothing. I survived because one man, a stranger, gave me a choice. No chains, no orders, just a choice. Stay or go. That is what made me human again." He stood then, his figure tall in the flickering firelight. His hand reached into his pocket, pulling out a small device. The collar around her neck glowed faintly in response. Her heart jumped, fear returning sharp and sudden. He stepped closer, his voice steady. "I won't keep you in chains. If you want to leave, you can. If you want to stay, it will be your choice, not mine." He pressed the device, and with a soft click, the collar around her neck released. The metal ring slid open and fell onto the floor with a dull clang. The girl gasped, her hand flying to her throat. The weight was gone. For the first time in her life, she felt the skin of her neck free. She touched it again and again, tears burning her eyes. "You're free," the man said simply. The words echoed in the room. Free. She had dreamed of it, prayed for it, but never believed it could be real. Now freedom lay before her, terrifying, impossible, beautiful. She stood shakily, the blanket slipping from her shoulders. Her legs wobbled as if they did not know how to move without chains. She stared at the door. It was right there. Open it, and she could vanish into the world. She could run from him, from the city, from everything. Her heart pounded. This was what she always wanted, to escape, to be free. But her eyes drifted back to him, He was watching her, not with command, not with hunger, not with cruelty, just waiting. His arms hung loosely at his sides, his shoulders heavy with years of pain, his face calm. He did not try to stop her. He did not even reach for the chain. Her voice shook. "If I go, you will not follow?" "No," he said softly. "Freedom means no one owns you, not even me." Tears blurred her vision. She turned toward the door, her feet dragging across the floor. Every step felt like a battle. Her hand touched the handle. She pulled it slightly. Cool morning air brushed against her skin. She could leave. No chains, no master. The world would be cruel, yes, but at least it would be hers. And yet, her hand froze. Images filled her mind. The soup, warm and rich. The blanket, soft on her shoulders. The fight at the door, his body standing between her and death. His words, "I know what it feels like to have no one stand for you." Her chest ached. She could not move. Slowly, she let the door swing shut again. She turned back, tears rolling freely down her cheeks. Her voice was broken, fragile, but firm. I don't want to go." The man's eyes softened just slightly. "Then stay, not as a slave, not as property. Stay because you choose to." Her knees buckled and she fell to the floor, covering her face with her hands. The sobs tore out of her chest, raw and painful, years of fear spilling into the air. For the first time, they were not screams of pain, but of release. The man did not move to touch her, did not try to comfort her with words. He only stood nearby, silent but steady, letting her cry until the storm inside her faded. At last, she lifted her face, red and wet with tears. She looked at him, her voice trembling. What happens now?" He sat down again, his voice quiet. "Now you heal. Now you live. One day at a time." Her heart swelled, breaking and mending all at once. The chains were gone. The fear would linger, yes, but for the first time she believed it could fade. And in that small house, in the flicker of the dying fire, a slave girl chose freedom, not by running away, but by staying where she had finally found safety.